Hello. So occasionally I'm going to record some videos for you to watch when you're at home to carry you through the poems that you have to read for each particular day. Normally we'd meet every day and we could get a lot of stuff accomplished, but this is not going to happen this year. So I'm going to record some videos talking about some of the things that you're going to read, pointing some things out where I think you might have some difficulty, and just generally helping you get through this. So the first section here, which is The Prodigy, which you're reading hopefully right now, covers George Bridgetower's emergence as a virtuoso. You'll notice his age. I think he ends maybe like at 9 years old, and he's already kind of this oddity because he can play so well. His father is also an oddity. He's called the African Prince, and he was recruited by Prince Esterhazy to have it's just kind of like part of like an arsenal of just kind of curiosities. So they have a dwarf, for instance. They've got this African prince, which is his father, and it's important to know that he's not actually an African prince in the sense that they think he is. In fact, my recollection of this, and we'll talk about this on Wednesday or Thursday, whichever day you're here, is that he's created this fictional persona for himself, and he actually just dresses in this garb that looks like people would think an African prince would look like, but it's not actually how an African prince would dress. You'll probably see some pictures of those if you do some searching around for that. So his dad is there to just kind of be like this exotic guy, and then fortunately his son is a really good violinist at an early age, so he's kind of like an oddity as well. So those two people work there, and then eventually, and Haydn, the composer, is there as well as kind of the court composer. It's not a real good job, and I would go into more of that as to why that's such a dissatisfying job as a composer. But I'm hoping that maybe you'll find some things about that in your research that'll tell you why that's not really, if you're like kind of like an artistic guy that really wants to write masterpieces, why being like working for like a prince is just not a good place to be. So it goes through that. It goes through some concerts that he has at the beginning when people are first kind of discovering his talent. So there's a couple things that I want to point out here in this opening section. One is the importance of clothing, and by extension of that, the importance of like your appearance and keeping up appearances, and how that's one of the markers that indicates that you're part of society. And there's always this thing that the bridge towers are part of the society, but they're not really of the society. They can't fully integrate, and there's always this kind of sense of someday maybe this will happen, and maybe the talents of being a violinist will help kind of crack that open. It wasn't, something that a lot of Black people at the time were doing, but he's such a talent that they're willing to ignore his race to give him opportunities to perform. So that's what you'll see here. There's a lot of contrast between here's what the society is that Bridgetower is playing in and his inability to get into that society. So we have like Mrs. Papendick's Diary, which is from the point of view of an upper class person. There's a really interesting poem in here called The Marine Pavilion, Brighthelmston, which is all about that. And if you do enough of research, you'll find it's this absolute monstrosity. And the whole poem is, I think, a really kind of cool argument about like the importance of like why this was built to this person. There's a key line in that one that says there can never be enough pleasure, which is kind of what we're coming, these people that have all this money or whatever, they can never build enough pleasure into their lives, and they have the wealth to do that. We've got the wardrobe lesson, like I said, talking about clothing, and I think that's it. There's a really cool poem at the end on page 50, the last poem, which is called Disappearance, which I think really talks in a really interesting way about like what it's like to be a performer and to like disappear into performance. And they've got some kind of cool, she's got some cool like anachronisms, like things that don't exist in the time there as well, off to the side. So it's a really kind of an interesting structured poem. Okay, so hopefully that'll give you enough to get you going with this section. And if you have any questions, feel free to send them to me through the Canvas messaging or anything like that, and we can use that to maybe get some discussion going in class.